2024 is winding down, and today we look back at the good times. I made my first trip to Australia and rode some awesome new coasters, but this video isn't about that. We talked about that last week. This is all about the coasters I've ridden in the past and got to re-ride, and maybe in the past I didn't think they were all that great. For some of them, I thought they were downright bad, but this year, that all turned around. These are the coasters that shot up my rankings in 2024. I want to start with three coasters I already thought were awesome, but this year they just confirmed that and elevated themselves into a new tier. Phoenix Econobles has been in my top 50 ever since I got my first ride in 2018. During my first two trips, I went on empty rainy days and I felt like I never got to see the ride at its full potential. In 2021, I got my best ride yet, but conditions were just perfect in 2024. Hot, crowded, back row, and that was far and away the best ride I've ever gotten on Phoenix, and it nudges me closer to the idea this might be the #1 wooden coaster in the country. I'm not there yet, but you know, closer. Raging Cajun at Six Flags America absolutely blew my mind in 2019. Totally the big surprise of the park, but I only got one ride, and I know these spinning coasters can be hit or miss. They aren't controlled, it's all based on weight. I went with Sophie this time. I had her sit on the other side of the car, which is what I did last time. It doesn't seem like it should work, but on Raging Cajun it does. This was off the wall insane, and makes me believe that 2019 ride wasn't just a fluke. This spinning mouse really is that insane. Finally, similar story for Spider at Lagoon. This has always been seen as one of the better spinners. I've enjoyed my rides in the past, but this year when we had a 3-person car that tossed the weight off balance, it was absolutely wild. By far the craziest ride I've ever gotten in a Mars spinner. Again, with these spinners, just get unbalanced and you're in for a ride. Number 15, Scream at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Wait, Scream? Hang on, let me check my notes. Yep, Scream comes in at number 15. I got out to Magic Mountain back in January on my way to Australia, and I rode Scream for the first time in probably 4 years. I'm not a big fan of that layout, that's not going to change, but for the first time in a long time, I got a very smooth ride on Scream. There was a rattle at the bottom of the first drop, that's always the worst part of the ride, but from there, it was downright enjoyable. I also rode the ride that Scream was modeled after, Medusa at Great Adventure, and I was blown away how glass smooth that was too. So, in the end, it was a good year for this 7-inversion B&M Floatless model. Number 14, Batwing at Six Flags America. This was the first time I'd gotten on Batwing in 5 years, and I decided to let Sophie ride it. Last time around, it was kinda bumpy, enough to get to your head, and why not? After all, it's in Old Vekoma at Six Flags America. I took a chance on them, and they paid off. Batwing is always going to be a fun ride, going up the lift on your back, flipping over and diving down. That vertical loop on your back is one of my favorite elements ever. You got some inline twists and a helix finale that really scrapes the ground, but I was so impressed how smooth it was. They're doing something right over there at Six Flags America. Not with their SLC, but at least with their flyer. Number 13, Roller Coaster at Lagoon. My first time on this in 5 years. Since the last time I was there, this celebrated its 100th birthday, so Lagoon has their work cut out for them. It was kinda getting rough last time, but this time it was nothing to complain about. I mean, if you are one to complain and wanted something glossy smooth, this isn't it. But come on, this is a big wooden coaster that's 103 years old, take the win. In the back row, not only do you get a smooth long ride, the airtime was absolutely on point this year. I was getting sharp pops on just about every hill, and I had to move this ahead of Wicked and make this my number 2 coaster in the park. It's no cannibal, but again, 103 years old and better than most of the wooden coasters I've ridden. Number 12, Wild Eagle at Dollywood. I've always said Wild Eagle was the worst wing coaster in the country. Even though it has that great straight first drop, it doesn't have a near miss element and that layout was just kind of forgettable. This time around, I got to sit second to back row and really enjoyed every element this year, starting off strong with that drop, the vertical loop, the 0G roll, the Emmelman, and ending with a corkscrew. Even on the outside seat, it was super smooth, and I think that smoothness helped me hold out my best restraint. Sometimes when it gets too bumpy, it'll slam down on you, and when that happens, my thighs are gone. I got to enjoy the whole ride, and it was by far the best I've ever had in Wild Eagle. Number 11, Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. My last ride on Hydra was, in a word, horrifying. It was back in 2018, in the front row, and it felt like someone poured gravel all over the track. I've had good rides on Hydra before, but that one left a bad taste in my mouth. I got one ride on it, in the back row, about half hour before close, and I think I was one of maybe 3 people on that train. This has one of the great floorless layouts. Honestly, just because it's so weird. The elements are all out of order. There's a heartline roll before you even hit the lift, and the elements are even shaped weird. I got an awesome night ride, super smooth, loved every moment, and even got a couple pops of airtime. I didn't really expect that. So, Hydro really solidified its spot in the top half of my floorless coasters. Number 10, Thunderhead at Dollywood. I've never ridden Thunderhead when it was 100% smooth. And by that, I don't mean smooth as glass. I mean, the whole track was running well. My last ride in 2022 was a tale of two halves. The first half nearly jackhammered all my teeth out, but the second half was great. I got back this year, hearing the whole thing was good now, and sure enough, it was great. Definitely the best ride I've gotten on Thunderhead since my first trip in 2016. You don't leave your seat too much on this one, but you're really not supposed to. It's a true GCI twister, and when you don't worry about getting your butt kicked, you can enjoy every twist and turn and crossover, and even that station flyby. Thunderhead is a quality wooden coaster. Number 9, Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I was skeptical about how much I'd like this back in 2022, but Pantheon backed up all the hype and I loved it. It's hard to believe this could rise up my ranks, but here we are. Pantheon blew me away even harder this year. We didn't have a lot of time to spare, but after we got off the first time, we had to come back for a second one. It wasn't even a question. When you get a ride like that, you have to go back for the encore. Every element hits just right. The party really getting started on that backwards airtime hill. That's just insane. Then, the airtime you get in the back row over the top hat and the outer bank is so good and so sustained. And even though its second half could be better, you gotta love the hang time on that stall. I said this was one of the best rides in the world, not just the best in the park by a mile, but truly one of the world's elite rides. It's only number 9 on this list because it was already so high to begin with. Number 8, Vortex at Carowinds. I've been to Carowinds a bunch since my first time in 2018. I returned in 2019, 21, 22, but I never dared get a re-ride on Vortex. I rode it on my first trip there and never made time to get back. In 2024, I decided Sophie was ready for it, so we got a ride, and I think I've been too harsh on it. I've always seen it as B&M's worst coaster. Now, I think that honor belongs to Firebird. Vortex was downright decent. It is a very early B&M, a small-scale stand-up so you're not getting much. A drop, a loop, a helix, a corkscrew, another helix. But if it's not too painful, you can at least appreciate the ride for what it is. I thought it was pretty smooth. We stood in the middle row, so that may have been smoother compared to the back. But me and Sophie both agreed it was a pleasant ride. It's not like I'm suddenly a big fan of Vortex, but at least I took it out of the B&M cellar. Number 7, Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. I had always been a big defender of Nitro, putting it in my top half of B&M hypers, but after 2019 and 2021, I thought the ride was losing some of its edge. Well, throw that out the window. Nitro is a powerhouse, starting with a 215-foot drop, giving some good airtime on those camelbacks going out and coming back. And then you hit the intense upward helix, and that's where Nitro's teeth really come out. This is one intense sustained moment, and the train has a huge head of steam slamming into that mid-course. The train slows down a little bit, and then you get one of the best airtime finales on any B&M hyper. This one might be the best when it comes to B&M. When I rode it in 2021, it was right after the park opened, so maybe that wasn't fair. I got 3 rides in 2024 across 2 days. All of them were later in the day, and Nitro is back. Not sure if it went anywhere, but at least for me, it's back. And we got in line 3 times for it because it was Sophie's top coaster in the park. Number 6, Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. The first time I rode this in 2008, I loved it. We would ride it, it would break down, we'd ride again, it'd break down again. We'd wait for maintenance. It's just what you do at Six Flags America. Then, I got back in 2019 and I just wasn't feeling it. Those shin guards were annoying. The bars and the sides of the lap bars were messing with the stuff in my pockets, and I pushed this down to be a low tier hyper. I also got back to ride of Steel at Darien Lake and did not like it last year, so I wasn't expecting much this year. Superman really surprised me. It was very smooth, the airtime was very good, the shin guards were annoying in the station but didn't bother me on the ride, and the trains were actually more comfortable than Ride of Steel's. That ride reminded me why we marathoned this back in 2008. Between its smoothness, comfort, and airtime, I regained a lot of respect for Superman Ride of Steel. Number 5, Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure. I was trying to remember the last time I rode this before this year, and I think I have to go all the way back to 2015. We skipped it in 2018, 19, and 21, so when we rode it this year and hit the final brakes, I was left wondering what the heck just happened. This mine train is a park original, 50 years old now. It's the oldest coaster in the park by almost 20 years, and let me tell ya, it brought the power. It was extreme from start to finish, starting with a helix and then some sharp drops, leading up to the ride's signature element, that swooping turn on top of the lake. Between that janky 1970s aero track profiling, The way the train would disappear over the drops in front of you. The way you would slide around your seat as it jerks you back and forth. This is such a great mine train. Second only to Thunderation at Silver Dollar City for me. And Sophie was a huge fan too. She wanted to get a rewrite, so we had to come back that night for another spectacular run. Number 4. Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. When I first went to Kentucky Kingdom in 2018, I wasn't that excited for this. It was a very small and short RMC, but what you can't see on the stat sheet is the power this brings. These elements are so perfectly shaped. This small RMC actually gave the strongest airtime. I got 6 rides that day, then came back 2 years later, and it seemed like it lost that edge. It was a cloudy day, I don't know if that affected it, but my opinion dropped. 4 years later, I come back, get a couple more rides, and Storm Chaser is absolutely back. All that power I got in 2018 that was missing in 2020 came flooding back. And sitting in the back row, I was getting tossed into all those airtime hills. My thighs were pressing against the bar. Oh, the sustained ejector, just the best feeling for an airtime junkie like myself. After a ride like that, you just can't walk away. We went back around and rode third to back. This time it wasn't quite as good, but still an elite ride. So, if you only have time for one ride, I'd make sure you get the very back and get the very best experience. Number 3. Skyrush at Hershey Park. Ah yes, my nemesis. Ever since my first ride in 2018, I said whoever designed those lap bars should be fired. There's no excuse for that incompetence. And in 2024, a miracle happened and they got replaced with new age Intamin lap bars. The ones that come over your head just like Velocicoaster. I also wasn't a big fan of its layout, having too much filler track and being pretty short overall, and it was kinda rough on the wing seats. Still, my number 1 issue was the lap bars, and that issue was completely resolved in 2024. The bar still comes down hard in your lap, and that's too bad, but it's not uncommon. That happens on mock rides coasters like Copperhead or Helix, or Gerstlauer's like Hangtime. But at least, you're not in pain when it happens, it just hurts the airtime. I think Skyrush got way rougher with the new trains. The back wing seat was Jackhammer City, and the layout still has a lot of filler. But you know what? They fixed the lap bars. After a dozen years of torture, they actually fixed the freaking lap bars. And me, personally, I'm forever grateful. Avoid a wing seat, make sure the lap bar isn't smashing your phone in your pocket, and just enjoy the ride. It shouldn't have taken 12 years, but better late than never. One of the great injustices in coaster history has been resolved. Number 2. Prairie Screamer at Prairie Playland. I rode this twice before. Once at its original home in Scandia in Ontario, that was at night, and once at its new home in Texas. That was about 37 degrees and nobody was there. I came back in August, rode this in the back with a full train, and this might actually be a top 50 coaster. It's an E&F high miler, starting with an 80-foot drop, 2,600 feet of track, riding those thin rails. And this coaster is so janky and so fun and so powerful. It makes you wonder who designed it and if they were qualified for the job. If not, I lived, I loved it, and I declared this America's most underrated coaster. So much janky airtime, pretty much on every hill. There was one hill mid-ride that completely threw me out of my seat, and the whole time it just felt too fast for its own good. I went from saying this ride was good to being an enormous fan. Number 1. Beast at Kings Island. Me and the Beast go back to 2002, and even though I loved what this ride was, I didn't like the ride itself. It was a legend. I felt obligated to like it, but it was just too rough to enjoy. Since Cedar Fair took over, I've been liking this coaster more and more, and for the first time since 2020, I got a ride in the Beast and it was just next level. I would say it was 95% smooth. It had a couple moments, but not bad for a wooden coaster that spans 7,361 feet. And people complain it's basically a mine train out in the woods, not having any thrill factor or good elements, and I'll give you that much. It's not much in terms of elements, but that train felt out of control. You could feel the trim slow it down, but that didn't take away from the insanity of the ride. It still felt like it was going way too fast. Of course, the Helix finale is so good. I've always loved that, and it's a perfect finale for the Beast. I also got my first night ride this year, and that was quite the experience. I said it wasn't a religious experience, just something cool and different. And my favorite part of that night ride was definitely the Helix. You felt like you were falling forever. It was hard to tell when you were turning around. Just pure chaos in the pitch dark. The Beast was always a mid-tier coaster at Kings Island for me, but after this year, it shot up near the top. That's a wrap on this video. Let me know what you think of these coasters, if you had a positive or negative experience on any of them, and what coasters shot up your list this year. Stay tuned, in a few days, I'll release the 10 coasters that shot down my list in 2024. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. Also, check out my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.